FPL Game Week 37 final decisions and complete guide video. We have just 2 weeks left, so it's not so much about long-term planning. It's about answering those specific questions. Which forward you should be selling if you're going to buy Ollie Watkins this week? What is worth a -4? And how should your decisions differ if you're chasing rank or you're trying to protect in your mini league or your overall rank? What is up, everyone? FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you are new around here. And we're going to dive in. I apologize that we've got a sort of AI generated image here, but what we're going to do at the start of this video is just have a general chat about the state of where you might be and how that might impact your decision making, players you're happy to buy, players you should be looking to buy with 2 weeks left of the season, because it's not like when we are throughout the season, the aim is just to bring in players who are going to score the most points when we're going throughout the majority of the season. With just 2 weeks left, whether you are chasing rank or whether you are protecting rank has a massive impact on what you're likely to do with your transfers. So, for example, if you're playing in your mini league and your rival already has Watkins and you're 10 points behind them, buying Ollie Watkins this week, unfortunately, although he looks like a great player to buy, is not the right thing to do if you are looking to chase rank. You should be looking and doing as much as you can to take calculated risks to do something a little bit different. However, if you are 10 points ahead and your rival has a really good player this week and you can get to them, or you can go to someone else that you quite like. For example, if you're looking to buy a midfielder this week and you could buy Saka or you could buy Bowen, and your rival has Jared Bowen but doesn't have Saka, if you're 10 points ahead, you should probably be buying Jared Bowen to potentially look at blocking your rival off. And that goes for overall rank as well. If you are, not at the overall rank you want to be at, then taking calculated risks to go against that in terms of players to buy and players to captain and try and do something a little bit different with 2 weeks left, despite it might mean that you need to buy a player that you don't actually expect to outscore the player you might want to buy, you do have to do it with 2 weeks left. Whereas if you are, ahead of your rank goal and you're worried about dropping back, which is where I am, making the transfer that is likely to protect yourself, like buying Watkins, over doing something which might seem a little bit more exciting, like buying Jamie Vardy this week, you need to think about it. So we're going to talk about lots of key questions in this video, players to buy, assistant managers, benching rankings and all that. But you do need to add this lens of what you want from the final 2 weeks of the season to every decision that you're looking to make. So if, for example, you're chasing rank and you've got an Arsenal defender, you've got Raya or you've got Areola, it might be worth taking a punt on starting Areola over Raya, because there's going to be a lot of Arsenal defenders being started this week. But you could also do the opposite and play double Arsenal defense to try and do something a little bit different. If you're chasing rank, trying to do something a little bit different. If you're protecting rank, trying to see what everyone else is doing and doing the same is probably a good way to go. So whether you're playing for rank, whether you're playing for a mini league, where you are and what you want to achieve over the final 2 weeks has to have an indication on what you do with your final couple of transfers. That being said, let's dive in and answer some of the key questions this week. The first one, if you're looking to buy Ollie Watkins this week, would I sell Mateta, Marmoush and Isak? Starting off, Isak is the one I'd like to sell least. I would actually sell Mateta and Marmoush as part of a -4 to Watkins before I sold Alexander Isak. I'm not certain that Mateta will start this game, plus then having Liverpool on the final day. Marmoush, we can't be certain he starts either of the games between now and the end of the season as well. Whereas Isak, although he has Arsenal this week, does have Everton at home on the final day. So selling Isak is probably the least likely thing I'd recommend. However, there is a knock-on impact for that for a lot of you going into Game Week 38, that selling Isak to Watkins might leave you money in the bank to go and buy a Bukayo Saka in Game Week 38. So it's not quite as plain sailing. Whereas if you do Mateta up to Watkins this week, you might not have the money in the bank to go and buy Bukayo Saka in Game Week 38. So it's not quite so much a Watkins versus Isak versus a Marmoush versus a Mateta decision, whereas it's actually a sort of Watkins versus Saka decision. Now, Saka, if you're buying him in Game Week 38, only has 1 week to go and score you points, whereas if you're buying Watkins this week, he has 2 points to maximize those. So in this case, I still would sell Mateta or Marmoush before I sold Isak. But if you're starting to consider a -4 to sell Mateta or Marmoush and then it still blocks you off Saka, in that situation, maybe then I would sell Isak for free and still have the route for Saka in Game Week 38, if all that makes sense. In terms of captaincy, I do think Ollie Watkins is just about number one. They are predicted to score the most goals this game week. Looking at the Spread X predictions from Rob T, 2.65 goals, 2.45 for Chelsea, just under 2 for Brentford and for Liverpool, just over 2 for Manchester City as well. So Watkins is first and Burmo is second. I know people don't like Palmer, but if you've got him, if you've gone with Palmer, he is an okay captain at home to Manchester United. Then it is Mo Salah, and then it is Erling Haaland. There is not loads to predict and to split the predicted points between a lot of these players going into this week. Watkins is set to be the most popular captain, followed by Mbeumo, and then a lot of people will just default to Mo Salah against Brighton on that Monday night. But with them being a little bit on the holiday, it does put me off going with him. So I think Watkins and Mbeumo are my 1 and 2. Palmer looks like a nice differential. Salah, if you just can't decide between anyone else, you can't really go wrong there. Now talking a little bit again about chip strategy. If you've got the assistant manager, you need to be buying a manager that's got a good fixture for the final 2 weeks. So you're really looking at Manchester City, you're really looking at Brentford, or you're looking at going at someone with a table bonus in either Brighton or in West Ham. If I had to pick myself, I probably would go with West Ham. Nottingham Forest at home is a decent table bonus game, followed by Ipswich away on the final day. But again, if you want to go safer, Brentford or Manchester City, depending if you have a slot available for either of those. Depending on what manager you had going into game week 37, you might decide to keep that. If you'd gone with an Aston Villa manager, if you'd gone with the Everton manager, for example, you probably roll with them going into this week as well. If you have a wild card, again, the recommendation is probably to wait and play it in game week 38 and play it like a free hit on the final day. Bench boost, it will really depend on what your bench looks like. I don't think it looked great in either week, so it will depend on how much investment you've got in a team like Newcastle. That might push you to a bench boost in game week 38. But if you've got lots of investment in someone like an Everton, for example, that might push you to have a bench boost in game week 37. Triple captain, if you've still got it, I would save and play it in game week 38. I don't love the options this week. If you do have another chip to play in game week 38, going on someone like an Ollie Watkins, someone like a Mo Salah, like an Mbeumo, or a Cole Palmer, like we discussed on the captaincy, is fine this week, but I would really be saving it for game week 38. Looking to play it on someone like a Bukayo Saka away at Southampton if you're chasing, playing it on a Bournemouth player at home to Leicester if you're chasing, Jared Bowen if you're chasing, or if you want to play it safe, just play it on Mo Salah at home to Crystal Palace. And the free hit, just like the wild card, I would save and play it in game week 38. I think it's best to play it then, depending on what investment you've got. If you do have lots of players from those teams like Arsenal, Bournemouth, West Ham, Liverpool that have a good fixture in game week 38, then you could look to play it this week. Again, I'd be looking to target triple Aston Villa, probably double Chelsea, triple Everton, maybe the odd Arsenal player in there as well. Trying to target that. Maybe you add a Manchester City player despite the FA Cup final. But again, I think the free hit is probably best placed in game week 38 for most of you. A few other bits of things to discuss. The first thing is Alexander Isak is apparently set to undergo an operation at the end of the season. I do not see him missing game week 37 or game week 38 while Newcastle are still chasing the Champions League. There is a small chance, a very, very small chance, that if they were to beat Arsenal in game week 37 and guarantee a Champions League spot, that we might see Callum Wilson start in game week 38, given that it would probably be his last Newcastle game. Alexander Isak, of course, is managing something, but unless they go away to Arsenal and beat them, which I don't think is going to happen, that's not really something to worry about. And I think the general chance of that happening is pretty slim. But it does just kind of show that it does feel like over the past few weeks that Alexander Isak has been playing with a little bit of an injury, and he hasn't been playing to maybe quite as the full potential that we've seen. So if you are 50-50 on a decision like Isak to Watkins, maybe this could be the thing to slowly push you over the edge. I've said it though, transfers are really precious. And if it's going to impact captaincy this week, because you think Watkins is the best captain, then yes, I probably would consider making the move. The other one is looking at Arsenal on the other side of that fixture this week. Looks like they're going to have Havertz, Declan Rice, Trossard, but also Martinelli looks like he's fine. And Jorginho all back and available. It might only be Timber and the long absentee in Gabriel Jesus that might be unavailable for them in this game, which could be a boost. And it is, of course, Arsenal's last home game of the season. The final one is the Liverpool squad have all been in Dubai. It has been confirmed that it looks like Arnie Slot was also in Dubai. It looked like he was at a beach club in Ibiza, but apparently that was a new beach club opening up in Dubai, and he was there with the rest of the squad. Apparently the squad have had some time to celebrate, a bit of a relaxation time, also a little bit of time to put a proper farewell to Trent as well, is what's being rumoured. Now, it does sound like they're going to return to Liverpool and return to training on Friday, which means they'll have Friday, Saturday, Sunday in training, a minimum of Saturday and Sunday, depending on when they return on Friday. How much they've done whilst they've been away, we don't quite know, but their game is not until Monday evening. Now, it does mean that they're obviously not fully preparing for these games as much as they've done before, which is probably enough for me to move the captaincy armband off Mo Salah, but it's probably not enough for me to sell him. He is still chasing records. He is still chasing that 20 goal, 20 assist record, that goal contribution record, which I think he's one away from now as well. He is still focused. Of course, captaining Mo Salah because of how maybe others are not fully prepared, I don't have a doubt that Mo Salah will still be wanting to chase those records though. So Salah for me is a keep, but probably not a captain, but I wouldn't go buying any other Liverpool players. And if you've got a Connor Bradley or someone, I probably wouldn't start them this week. Looking at players to buy this week if you're in goal, Flecken is number 1, David Raya is number 2. You might not love going with an Arsenal defender, but Newcastle at home, Southampton away over the final 2, if you have to play them both weeks, is not bad. Now, if you have a good goalkeeper for 38, and then you can buy Jordan Pickford this week. If you have a good goalkeeper this week, then you can buy Kepa. Edison is the other one that works over the last couple of weeks. Into defence, Gvardiol. I also don't mind doubling up with Ruben Diaz as well, although Bournemouth have scored against Manchester City in all their games so far this season, so I'm not certain on the double up. Collins is a nice cheap option with 9 attacking returns, Fulham at home, Wolves away in the last 2, and of course have the potential to be chasing Conference League football until the final day, which is a little bit of boost unless Crystal Palace go and win the FA Cup, which means that 8th would no longer get European football. Wan-Bissaka I also like if you're buying for the final 2 weeks at a nice cheap price because Forest at home, Ipswich away looks pretty nice. Saliba again if you need for the final 2 weeks, Newcastle and Southampton just like David Raya. And you could go with Marc Cucurella. Without Jackson there, Chelsea are going to have to try and find goals from all over the pitch as best they can. Man United at home, Forest away, there could be a clean sheet in one of those two. If you're buying a defender, you need them probably to be getting 1 return over the last couple of games. Into midfield, Brian Mbeumo, if you still don't have, is number 1, followed by Jared Bowen. I really like these two. I wish I owned Jared Bowen, but I don't. He's probably going to have to stay out of my team until the end of the season, unless in game week 38, someone like De Bruyne got benched. I'm almost certain that Jared Bowen would be the number 1 replacement for me. Bukayo Saka, number 3, Cole Palmer, number 4. Now, Palmer is a better buy this week if you need a captain, but over the final couple of weeks, I think Saka with the Southampton fixture is probably better. If you're debating whether to go Palmer and then Saka, I probably would just go straight to Saka. Rodgers I really like. If you need a differential, right, like we spoke at the beginning of the video, if you're chasing versus if you're protecting. If you're protecting, Rodgers is a really good buy. If you're chasing, Asensio is a much better buy. Without Jacob Ramsey in the team, it looks like Asensio's minutes should definitely go up and up, which boosts Asensio. Plus, he should be on penalties as well, although not guaranteed. So could offer a really good differential this week as opposed to Rodgers. Another cheap option that you could look at, of course, is Kevin Schade has done very well recently, and one we'll be keeping an eye on going into next season and what his price might be. Moving into the forward line, Ollie Watkins is number 1. There's no real debate about that. If you can afford him, he is the one to buy with Spurs and Man United in the final 2. Wissa is number 2. I don't mind him at a cheap price. He didn't return last week, but he's still getting chances. Number 3 is the romantic pick, and it is Jamie Vardy. I do have to offer a little bit of caution and a little bit of a caveat to Jamie Vardy. Sounds like from Leicester that Jamie Vardy will not feature and will not be in the squad for Leicester in game week 38 away at Bournemouth. So if you buy Vardy this week, you have to be aware that you will be an attacker down in game week 38. Now, if you have a strong front 7 outside of that final forward, or you want to go to Evan Nilsson in game week 38, I don't mind buying Jamie Vardy. I like it. 1 goal away from 200 Leicester goals. His 500th appearance for Leicester, which is why they're ending it here. His final home game, his 500th appearance. They don't want him to play against Bournemouth as they prepare for the future. So I like that, but it comes with a bit of a caveat. Evan Nilsson, I don't mind over the final 2 weeks. Similarly with Welbeck, the fixture this week is okay for them. Manchester City, of course, play the FA Cup final. Liverpool, of course, have been away as well. Then in game week 38, Evan Nilsson has Leicester and Welbeck has Spurs after the Europa League final. Moving on and having a look at the rankings in terms of goalkeepers. If you've got Pickford, I would play him. I do like Martinez over Raya if those are the two you've got. Edison, Fleck and Sells. Sanchez of Chelsea if you do have him. Henderson Raya just about over Areola. Then it is Fabianski and Verbruggen and Kepa. It is worth noting, I am going on a hunch that I think Fabianski starts one of the last 2 games this season for West Ham. He is leaving in the summer. He has been a great servant for them, and this is their final home game. Do think it's a realistic expectation that Fabianski might start this game, which is why he's made it into the benching ranking. Then we move into the defenders, midfielders, forwards, and I've had to make this list even longer. We're up to 34 names, and I'm sure there's still not everyone in here that you'd want. The general consensus is I would be playing a back 3. I don't love playing a back 4, but I would be playing minute-safe players over those players with a bit of a risk, particularly the ones at Crystal Palace. Manchester City do still have focus on the Premier League. They do still need to win their Premier League game, so I would be starting someone like a De Bruyne or an Erling Haaland if you've got them, but someone like a Marmoush, maybe not. And those Palace midfielders, if you've got someone you can play over them, I would, although Eze is the one I think is most likely to start. So Salah, Saka, Haaland, Asensio, Chris Wood, Bowen, Wissa, Rodgers. To be honest, most of you are almost certainly starting all of them. There's no Wally Watkins in here because, of course, if you own someone like him or an Mbermo or even a Palmer, you're definitely starting them this week. Then it is Kevin Schade if you own him. Gibbs White, Isak, Cunha, De Bruyne. De Bruyne over Eze, Eze over Elanga. Then we start to see a bit of the defenders flow in. So if you've got an Everton defender, if you've got an O'Brien, we don't have an injury update on him yet, but I would be starting him in the hope that he does start. Then it's Gavardio as my favourite defender because he's likely to probably play left back in the game. Munoz, Sarr, Brentford defender if you've got a Collins, over some of them like a Clivert, Evan-Nilsson, Semenyo. I don't expect much from the Bournemouth attackers away at Manchester City. Marmoush, Murphy, Konza, Wan-Bissaka, Aït-Nouri. Then it is the Arsenal defence. Then it is the Nottingham Forest defence. Then it is Bradley. Then it's Mateta, just because I don't think he's going to start. It is a prediction. I don't know it for certain. If you think Mateta does start, then go for it. But I wouldn't be taking the risk. I would be benching him if you can. Burn and then Kirkes. Looking at Rob T, FPL's projections using the data, Aston Villa projected to score the most goals, followed by Chelsea. Again, it is purely based on them going up against Spurs and Man United, who do have the focus on the Europa League final next Wednesday. Manchester City also up there, Everton, and those are the 4 teams predicted to score over 2 goals this week. Brentford, Arsenal, Brighton, and Liverpool all do get close as well. In terms of clean sheet odds, Everton with 46%, followed by Chelsea with 40%, are the only 2 that really get anywhere near that 40% mark. Aston Villa and Manchester City are the only 2 other teams who get close to the 30% mark with 32% apiece. Arsenal, the one to look at, are 29% this week, but that is higher than West Ham, who have 25%. Then moving on and having a look at the assistant manager, we spoke about it earlier on. Hertzler is predicted to score the most this week. Then it is Graham Potter and Unai Emery. The top 2 have the table bonus. Unai Emery against Spurs, Enzo Maresca also against the Man United team, and David Moyes. Then Pep Guardiola and Thomas Frank, the slightly safer non-table bonus ones that I'd be looking at. If it was me, I'd probably be going with Thomas Frank or Pep Guardiola, but probably Graham Potter at home to Forest, and then Ipswich away in game week 38 would be where I would look. So wrapping up by having a look at my team, it remains the final 2 decisions. Do I go with Evan-Nilsson or do I go with Sarr? My thought process is that in game week 32 and then the beginning of game week 33, when they had their double, all the Palace players played the double in 32 and the first game of 33. It was the midweek of 33 before the FA Cup semi-final that we started to see some rotation, but they did all play 3 games in the space of that week. And I don't massively think this is that different. Now, if the game in the FA Cup final goes to extra time, then you start to see things a little bit differently. Maybe the turnaround is a little bit shorter. Maybe you have the party atmosphere if they do win the FA Cup final. But I do think if they lose, we probably see a pretty full-strength Crystal Palace team going into that final home fixture. And I just don't expect very much from Bournemouth and Evan-Nilsson. I know he scored in his 2 appearances against Manchester City so far this season, but I just don't expect very much. I could just go with the safety of minutes and not have to worry when that team sheet comes out about whether Sarr is going to start or not. But if they both start, then I do think Sarr is just a much better pick than Evan-Nilsson this week. I just have to have a bit of a think about the minutes, the knock-on impact about whether they lose or win in the FA Cup, and maybe Evan-Nilsson is just safer, but Sarr is in at the moment. And the only transfer I'm going to really consider this week is Isak out and Watkins in. I have considered doing Sarr to Rodgers. I have also considered about doing Sarr to Asensio as well, because I actually do think Asensio is a better pick than Rodgers for this week alone. But in game week 38, once we have Jacob Ramsey back for Aston Villa, I do then prefer Rodgers because of his minutes over Asensio. So I have considered that, because not only would it give me a bit of Aston Villa cover, it would allow me to keep Alexander Isak for game week 38. It would also give me better bench cover in game week 38, because I would be able to have my Aston Villa player away at Manchester United on the bench instead of having Sarr away at Liverpool on the bench. So I have considered that, but I don't think it's what I'm going to do. I'm still not ruling it out, but I still don't think it's probably the sensible thing to do. I think Isak to Watkins is still the most likely transfer. It's not something I've confirmed. They are the earliest kickoff for the deadline, so are Spurs. If we see suddenly news that Spurs are putting out a full strength lineup, then I might be less likely to make the transfer. But if we were to hear that they were putting out a really weak lineup, then I'd be more inclined to make the transfer, for example. So not fully decided on what I'm going to do. I do think that Isak to Watkins is my likely plan. And then based off the captaincy ranking at the beginning of the video, it would likely move the captaincy armband to Watkins. I'm not guaranteeing that if I buy Watkins, I will captain him though, because part of me thinks that the shield play in my position, and I know this is very specific to my rank and my rank goals for the final 2 weeks of the season, but I'm 8k and all I want to do is finish in the side of the top 10k. If it was elsewhere in the season, I would think differently to how I am now, but that is all I'm really focused on. Part of me wonders about doing Isak to Watkins just to protect a little bit against the Aston Villa, but also bet against it a little bit by going with a captaincy on Brian Mbeumo, who's likely to be the other one that I'd consider. Now, part of me then says, well, Harry, you also have Wissa, so hopefully he'll cover the Mbeumo captaincy that you won't have, and you can use Watkins as captain when you don't have someone like a Rodgers as well. There's a lot of thoughts going around in my mind. Most likely is I do Isak to Watkins. That remains the most likely. Second most likely is I roll my transfer. Third most likely is I do Sarr to a midfielder in like a Rodgers or Asensio and try and cover the Villa attack whilst keeping Isak for Everton at home in game week 38. So that is all. The penultimate deadline stream, game week 37 deadline stream has been scheduled. Please do click the link above, click notify for a reminder when that does go live. It is a Friday evening deadline and it is slightly earlier than normal. It is normally a 6:30 p.m. deadline on a Friday, but it is not. It is 6 p.m. because of what the time that Aston Villa Spurs game is being brought forward to kick off. So we will be live this evening on Friday, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. UK time, answering your questions, looking for any early team news if we get it, confirming any final transfers, talking about game week 37, the final couple of weeks, answering all your questions is what we do. You hopefully know by now on the deadline stream. So tune in if you want. Drop any questions you have about final decisions, the guide, in the comment section down below. Anything, I feel like I've covered a lot in this video. So anything that's not covered, drop it in the comment section down below. If not, bring those questions to the deadline stream this evening and we'll spend 2 hours answering them as well. Thank you all for watching. 2,000 likes is the aim. Good luck in the final 2 weeks of the season. 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you're new around here and I'll be back again very soon.